All right, good afternoon, room 202. Today you will be adding integers with the same sign. This is from Unit 1, Module 1. Your essential question today is how do you add integers with the same sign? By the end of this lesson, you need to be able to explain in writing how to add the integers with the same sign. Let's go ahead and get started. The first thing you need to do is be aware of a couple key words. The first word being integer. Now the definition of integer, which you should know by now, is a positive or negative whole number. For example, let's start with a basic. I could have positive 5 or I could have negative 5. These are both integers. I have a positive whole number and I have a negative whole number. Now, it doesn't have to be small numbers. I could have an integer 1,253. An integer could also be a negative large number, such as negative 561. The key thing here is it's a positive or negative whole number. Another word you need to be familiar with is absolute value. Now the definition of absolute value is the distance in numbers from 0 on a number line. So go ahead, bear with me as I draw a very rough number line. Let's go ahead and put 0. We'll go ahead and do 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me go ahead and label these numbers, 3 and 4. Let's add some negative numbers on our number line, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. So the notation for absolute value are these two bars. So let's start off with the absolute value of 2. The absolute value of 2 is going to be the distance in numbers from 0. So I go to number 2 and I have to find how far it is from 0. Well, it's just going to be 0 to 2 is 1, 2 spaces away. So the absolute value of 2 is 2. Let's look at a negative number. If I have the absolute value of negative 4, I'm asking how far is negative 4 from 0? Well, starting at 0, it is 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces away. So the absolute value of negative 4 is 4. You should notice that the absolute value of numbers is always positive because in this case, distance is always positive. Let's go ahead and get into the lesson. The first problem we're going to look at, the first thing we're going to talk about is how we can represent problems when we're adding integers. The first thing we can use are counters. In this case, yellow counters represent positive numbers and red counters represent negative numbers. Always look at what the key is for what your counters represent. Another thing we could use to model adding integers is the number line. You could use a horizontal number line, which most of you should be familiar with. And we can also use a vertical number line, which is a number line except it just goes up and down, kind of like a thermometer. So let's get going. The first problem is 5 plus 8. And I know many of you are like, Mrs. Bailey, it's 5 plus 8. I can do this. Well, let's just review how to use models to show this. So the first thing I'm going to do is remind you that yellow counters are going to be representing positive numbers. So let's look. 5 plus 8, right? So here's my positive 5 right here. And what we're going to do is we are going to add a positive 8. So I'm going to use 8 counters to show 8. So really what this is representing right here is I have 5 positive counters and 8 positive counters. Together, all we have to do is add how many we have all together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So 5 plus 8 is 13. Let's look at this same problem, but on a, but on a number line. Again, this is something you should be able to do. We're just practicing modeling it. So if I use a number line to show this, you're going to have to excuse me. Here's 0. I'm not going to label all the numbers. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, We can even put 14. Now, obviously, we already know that 5 plus 8 equals positive 13. We're just showing how to model it. So when I model on a number line, I start with what I'm given first. In this case, it's 5 or positive 5. So I'm going to go there on a number line, and I'm going to add a positive 8. So all I'm going to do is bunny hop in the positive direction. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you're going to see we end up with 13. Now we can go to the next example, which is negative 4 plus negative 5. Now again, I want to remind you that we're going to use counters on the first way to represent it, and red equals negative numbers or represents one negative number. So the first thing I'm going to do is start by representing what I'm given first, which is negative 4. So there are my negative 4 counters, and we are going to add to those negative 4 counters our negative 5. So here they come. And just like the last problem, all I have to do is find out how many total negative counters do I have if I have negative 4 plus negative 5. Well, I just add all my red. How many do I have all together? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Negative 4 plus negative 5 is negative 9. Now, just like the last example, we can also use a number line to represent this. Just like the last time, I start with what I'm given first. In this case, I'm given a negative 4 first. So there's my negative 4 plus negative 5. Now, negatives move to the left. I'm adding it to negative 4, so I start there. And I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the negative direction. And we end up at negative 9 again. Now, we're going to do something different here, and we're going to actually use absolute value to show how to add these negative numbers. Now, when you use absolute value, you just find the absolute values first. So the first thing I'm going to do is go, okay, the absolute value of negative 4 is 4. If you remember, we did this when we talked about the definition of absolute value. And the absolute value of negative 5 is 5. Remember, absolute value is just the distance from 0. Now I'm going to find the sum of my absolute values. 4 plus 5 equals 9. And then I'm going to use the sign of the integers I was given to write my answer. So negative 4 plus negative 5 equals negative 9. Now when you're doing your independent practice later, you can use any model you want. You can use the counters, you can use number lines, you can use absolute value, and just use the rules for adding integers. Now, before I let you go onto your own, we're going to look at a problem in context. So our problem here says that Max borrows $6 from his brother and $4 from his mother. It's not really key, I don't need to underline that. Find the total amount of money that Max borrows. Well, let's talk about the word borrows. When you borrow money, you're essentially going to have to pay it back. So really now I'm in debt $6. And when I borrow $4 from the mom, we are in debt another $4. Because it's asking to find the total amount of money borrowed, we're going to be adding, right? Total signifies put them all together. So if we borrow $6 and we borrow $4, we end up with the addition sentence negative 6 plus negative 4, which equals negative 10 if we use the absolute value, right? The absolute value of negative 6 is 6. Plus the absolute value of negative 4 is 4. 6 plus 4 is 10. Use the sign. So what this means is that Max borrows a total of, of $10. All right, excuse the writing. I know it looks silly. Last thing, ladies and gentlemen, it's your turn. Go ahead, pause your screen. Answer these 3 questions using any of the strategies we went over. When you're ready to check your work, hit play. All right. I know you paused it, and I totally know you did not cheat, and you are ready to go over it. So here we go. Number 1, 3 plus 7, going old school. I'm going to use counters to represent this. Here's my positive 3. And to that positive 3, I'm going to add positive 7, which gives me a total of 10. Number 2, negative 3 plus negative 7. Again, I'm going to use counters. This time I'm using red counters to represent negative 3. After negative 3, I'm going to add negative 7 using those negative counters again, which equals a negative 10. You should see that these are just opposites. For number 3, I'm going to use the absolute value. The absolute value of negative 5 is, is 5, plus the absolute value of negative 11 is 11. 5 plus 11 is 16. Going back here, use the signs of what I added, and I get negative 5 plus negative 11 equals negative 16. At this point, make sure you record any questions you have, and you are ready to go over this tomorrow in class and clarify any misconceptions. See you guys tomorrow. Hope you have a great night.